So childhood was relatively normal, pretty much like everybody else's. My mum swears blind nothing weird ever happened that she can remember. I suppose, in fairness, it was a very long time ago, and people tend to forget details that are not relevant to their own lives. That's how I look at it. I mean, I remember waking up one day and thinking, there's weird things floating around me and I have no idea what that is. And something in my head whispered that it was ghosts, and that was me terrified. And I remember going in and standing over my dad and thinking, he's going to kill me if I wake him up, but I really don't want to go back in that room. And he woke up, of course, with me standing over him, and, you know, obviously wasn't very happy about that. I got took back to bed, and I remember trying to tell my mum I could see these white lines everywhere, and she calmed me by saying I'd been looking at the lights, and then when you close your eyes you can still see the reflections of the lights. And I wasn't 100% convinced by this, but I taught myself to stop seeing it over the next few years because it was terrifying. I didn't know what the hell it was I was looking at. I would look at the light to stop myself from seeing it because it was like floating white lines of light. I didn't know what it was. I was too young to know. Skipping back a bit, we'll go back to the beginning. When Gillian was born, I was not inside of her. I was pretty much anywhere else but inside of her. I was on the ceiling. I wasn't inhabiting my body in the way that you might think. I mean, ultimately, we are eternal beings. We've been around for a very long time. We are adults, and I really upset a lot of people when I talk like this because they don't like to think of their little precious as being, you know, someone, a being that's capable of having sort of sexual thoughts and things like that. But children are just adults with new bodies. And it's something that we don't fully appreciate. How could we? We don't know this stuff. But anyway, one of my first memories is sitting watching the Bay City Rollers on our little tiny black and white portable TV, literally like that in front of it. I was about 2 years old and thinking, I'm having Woody's babies when I grow up. I knew exactly what that meant too. And I couldn't even talk at that point, but I knew my thoughts were fully formed. I couldn't speak those words, but I knew exactly what it was I was thinking about. And my first memory is my dad picking me up from in front of that concert and me deciding, no, I will watch this concert and I'll just keep screaming until I get my own way. And I did, until I was absolutely shattered. I remember my dad getting his accordion out and playing Stranger on the Shore, and me finally dozing off, and my last thought being, oh, he wins. And I kind of popped out of my body at that point, and I was talking to someone on the ceiling, sorry. And I remember saying to him, I can't do this for much more. I can't have my will taken away from me like this. It's killing me. It's driving me crazy. I need to go to sleep. And those were my exact words. And he said, yeah, it won't be long. And at that point, as I say, most of the time my body was young. She still couldn't communicate. She didn't really have much autonomy. And, you know, she was fun to enter occasionally, but for the most part, I wasn't in there. And I remember my mum come back, and that's one of my nice memories from childhood. My mum was pregnant with my brother at that point, and I can still remember when she went into the hospital. We stayed with my grandmother, and I remember being taken in with my dad and my uncle to go and see my new brother when he was born. And we took this massive big bag of grapes in with us, and they sat me on the bed next to my mum, and they put a big bag of grapes down in front of me for her. And my mum asked me if I wanted some, and I sort of, put my hand in, started eating her grapes, and I popped out and I went onto the ceiling. And we had an interesting lesson that day. he was teaching me how to make long-term memories. And the conversation we were having was something along the lines of, you have to fully focus your attention on what it is that you're seeing. You have to really, really want to take in every single detail. You have to be fully present. And I remember I was still up there talking to him when I heard my mum exclaiming that I had eaten all of her grapes. I had just set my body away eating, and then I just left it. I wasn't paying the slightest bit of attention to what it was doing. So it became this thing all the way throughout my childhood that I'd eaten all my mum's grapes that day. I couldn't remember any of it. But I remember not long after that being picked up and being held over the cot that my new brother was in. And I remember looking at him and thinking, I'm your big sister, and I'm always going to look after you. I'm always going to take care of you. And I can remember every single second of that memory like it just happened yesterday. I was practicing creating long-term memory, so it was the first time, and it was also, I remember thinking it's something that everyone would want to remember. It's the first time I saw him. So that was a nice day. But we're going to skip forward a little bit more. My mum and dad moved into a house in not far away in Felling, where we lived then, and every single night, with less and less frequency over the coming years, my guardian would come back and visit me. And he had this technique for getting me out. He'd always make me feel guilty. He'd say, Gillian, are you there? She doesn't hear me. I'm alone. And I'd go, no, I hear you, I'm coming. And over the period of time, it worked less and less. And I remember the last time he came for me, at that point, I could still remember quite considerably that I didn't want to be here. That this life had been a life that, albeit interesting, wasn't one I wanted. Wasn't one I wanted to be incarnate in, that my ultimate desire was to be at one with the universe again. I didn't want to be a separate entity. I didn't want to be Gillian, as fun as she was turning out to be. He came back and he asked me what I liked about my life, and I told him she really likes sweet things. She really likes music, and we would talk about my body and what she was interested in and how she felt at certain times and how sweet things tasted. And this last time he came to see me, he told me that he was going to take me out and that I was going to wake up that day. And I was really excited because that was all I knew I wanted. And anyway, I remember he sat me on the bottom of my bed and he put my arms over my shoulders, and the next thing I knew, I started to rock. And I was being moved from the outside. I wasn't doing that. And I closed my eyes and I started to ascend. And when I looked up, it was like an upside down tornado. I mean, I've been kind of obsessed with these swirly, tornado-y things most of my life. I love those kinds of pictures. And I started to float up into this upside down tornado. It was kind of grey. And I got halfway up and I remember thinking, I can't be scared. I can't be frightened, because if I'm frightened, he won't take me. And it was probably that thought, to be fair, that killed the whole thing. But the next thing I knew, I was falling, and I opened my eyes, I was back in my body, and I started sobbing and asking why he hadn't took me. And he just said, you're not ready, it's not time, I'll come for you later on, we'll try again. I was so upset. And he told me he had a surprise for me that night and that he was taking me out. And I said, okay. So the next thing I know, I've left my body on the bed, sat where we left it. And we're going through, kind of hard to explain, but it's, if I had to put a word on it, I'd say we were in a wormhole. It was sort of like a tunnel, and it was multicolored, and it felt like we walked for quite some time, and it felt like we were in space. It's, again, really hard to explain. I'm having to remember it through my mind's memory, but that's basically what I remember happening. And he had a hold of my hand, and we were chatting as we were walking along this big thing. And it was almost like there was a number of doors, and we came out of a door, and we just kind of descended, a bit like in Harry Potter, where the wizards just start to sort of, walk down to the ground. And we came into the middle of this clearing. There was trees on different sides of me. There was houses in front of me, really nice sort of cottagey type things. And he took me inside one of them, and there was like a stone staircase going up. There was a kitchen, there was a living area, and there was this lady, and he said, "Oh, this is Gillian, I'm going to leave her with you for a while, I'll come back for her later." And he left me, and I was there for absolutely ages. I honestly don't know how long I was there. I was there so long that by the time he came back, I think in my head I was one of her kids, and I barely remembered the fact that I'd left anywhere behind. I'd been there for so long. They taught me how to manifest reality with my mind, how to create through thought. I've kind of stolen the word from Scientology because it fits really well, but I call it postulating. You decide something is, and therefore it is. And that's generally the rule of how it works. That's basically the premise it's based on. Anyway, one day he turned up out the blue and said it's time to go home. And I'm pretty sure I had a teddy bear or something in my hand as we left. And don't ask me what it was, because I certainly didn't take it back with me. But I had something clutched to me when I left, and we went back the same way we came. He put me back in my body, and he said, and I said, "Oh yeah," I basically said, "Oh yeah, I can't wait to tell my family where I've been. I can't wait to tell my parents where I've been." And he said, "Oh, you can't tell them. You won't be telling them because you won't remember any of this in the morning, and you won't remember me." And I laughed and said, "Don't be stupid, I could never forget you." But there was another part of me that was thinking, I'm going to sleep. And he put me into bed, and he put the covers up towards my chin, and he sort of lay over me on the bed, and he told me that it would all be all right, and that he'd come back for me when the time was right. And at that point, I asked him about, when he was showing me my life, he basically was telling me what my mission was, what I was here to do this lifetime, and that I was not here to do it alone, that I was meant to be with another. And the other would be a guy who lived on the other side of the planet, America, as it happens. And I remember that last conversation that we had was, how will we find each other? How will we meet? And he just sort of said, "Leave that to me. That's not your concern." So yeah, the next morning I literally couldn't remember anything, but some residual memories must have remained, because I remember asking my parents for a Wonder Woman costume, and they got me one for Christmas that year. And I remember taking this costume, so excited, and going up to my room, and it had to be done alone. So shutting the door, making sure I was on my own, put the costume on, sat on the side of the bed, and just started repeating the mantra that I'd always used: all I have to do to create is believe, all I have to do to create is believe, all I have to do to create is believe, all I have to do to create is believe. And I fixed it in my head, I made it real, and then and bearing in mind, I was like 6, maybe 5 or 6. I got up off the bed and I spun. And I remember feeling so deflated, and I sat down, I thought, that doesn't work anymore. and it felt like I'd been cut off. Like the energy that I used to have access to was suddenly not there, because my postulate was good. I knew I could literally create anything. This place is just a monopoly board that, for beings who are capable of creation, it's not particularly hard. And there are a lot more out there than you realise. And it just didn't work anymore. So, the words I used are telling as well. The fact that I said it doesn't work anymore, it would imply that I believed it had worked before. So even though I can't remember my time on that, I would say planet, but I'm just going to say that place, I still don't remember what I experienced there. I can remember my past lives, I can remember a whole host of other things I'm going to tell you as we go, but I still don't remember what happened while I was there. I'm assuming at some point my memory of that will come back, but it hasn't done yet. So yeah, after that I was asleep. I was like everybody else. I was solidified inside my body. I couldn't leave anymore. I didn't try to leave. I didn't know I could leave. I couldn't remember him as he said I wouldn't. So after that, that was when the whole lines thing happened, because my head was still able to see what I could see, but I didn't know what it was I was seeing anymore. And I could still hear him. That's who said it's ghosts. But I didn't know that that wasn't my own mind. I didn't know that that was an exterior being. To me, that was inside my head, therefore it was mine, when that's actually far from the truth. So anyway, rest of my childhood pretty much was fairly normal. I was very, very taken with religion quite early on. I loved this concept of God, and I used to stay up until like 2 o'clock in the morning just talking to him. The way I'm talking to you now, I would basically just talk to God, tell him what was going on, tell him what I was thinking, tell him what was happening at school. And I asked him numerous times to talk back. I would hear in my head, "Hello, Gillian," and always think, it's just me. I imagined it. And I thought that every single time. The last time I asked him, I think I was about 12. And I was so devastated that he didn't, because I thought, I know he's there. I know he exists. I know he can hear me. So the fact that he isn't talking to me, that's kind of hurtful. So I'm just not going to do this anymore. When I got to 16, having gone to a convent school, I started to realise that Catholicism was quite close to where I was, but they didn't see God the same way that I did. And I felt my appreciation of God was actually closer to the truth. So I remember walking out and thinking, that's it, I'm done with that. And at that point in time, I didn't quite know what to replace it with or where to go from there. It didn't occur to me to try and develop any further on my own. I was 16, I just left school. I started going out with guys, and oh yeah, we're skipping a thing. The person I was meant to meet here. I was given 3 instructions that I would remember even after I was put to sleep. And I was told, don't get married, don't have kids, wait for the one that will come to you. Hungry. And I would hear that over and over again. And it was almost like a programming in my software. I didn't really understand why or where that information came from. It didn't even occur to me to question it, but I spent most of my childhood avoiding anything to do with boys, because in my head I was waiting for this guy and I had this special destiny, and until me and him got together it wouldn't come about. And I didn't quite know what it was we were meant to be doing. I didn't question that either. I just knew I was meant to meet someone and I had to wait for him, period. It was so ingrained, it was so entrenched. I never questioned where it came from or why I was doing it or anything I don't suppose children do. So I went through my childhood with this, and I remember telling the odd friend in high school, in secondary school, and having them say, "You're weird." I really was weird. I wasn't probably like other girls in there, to be fair.